Hello, everybody. Welcome to Ape Nation, your number one source for all things Planet of the Apes on YouTube. My name is Josh, and today we're doing something a little bit different than my usual videos, and we actually have the first ever guest on the Ape Nation YouTube channel, the director of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Mr. Wes Ball. How you doing, Wes?
Hello. Great stuff. Great videos. I've been watching your stuff for a long time.
Thank you.
Uh, Started. I always thought it was very thoughtful. And as soon as I saw you on Reddit, I was like, yeah, let's do this, baby. Let's figure this out. And like I said before, the fact that I don't have to go through like the publicity team and and spend an hour answering 5-minute questions where we can just riff together here. I think this is gonna be a good time.
Awesome. I love to
Oh
hear
yeah,
it.
attention to the to other people watching. I will do my best to not give away any spoilers, but I'll try to also go in depth on all the fun stuff. So just
Love that. Good, good. Um, and before we get started, seriously, I just want to say thank you so much again, taking your time out of what I imagine is a crazy busy schedule for you right now,
yeah.
to do this with us.
Actually, it's funny because I delivered the movie 3 days ago or something like that on Sunday. So that means like there's really not much more for me left to do, other than I have to still approve the IMAX version and the Dolby Vision version, and the I'm putting together the DVD stuff right now.
Oh, awesome.
And then on Monday heading out to London to start the whole like big press tour, which is just a whirlwind. I go to like Mexico and Tokyo and all these different things. So all the way up, I think I get back from Tokyo on the 10th, on the day of the movie releases. So yeah, so it's a the really stressful part is over. Now it's just kind of, I'm in other people's hands now as they try to, sell the movie essentially.
Okay, gotcha. Speak since you done. Like, how are you feeling about it? Like, feel confident? Feel happy? Proud?
Yeah, no, very much so. Yeah, it's been a hell of an experience, I was looking at it earlier, and when the movie comes out, it'll be 4 years and like 8 months when I was first asked, what would you do with next Planet of the Apes?
Yeah,
So it's been a hell of a journey. We survived the COVID, because we started writing the script when COVID hit, which was kind of in a weird way fortunate because we didn't have to be together for that. We could do this, and we were already doing Zoom stuff. And then on top of that, there was a whole regime change where Disney took over Fox. So
yeah.
and had the person who kind of first brought me on, Emma Watts, she left the company, and then Steve Asbell, who was an old friend, he took over. And so it's funny, like this thing has gone through many trials, big obstacles, and it's survived each one of them. So, we've come out the other end stronger, and but I have to admit, I'm almost numb to it all now, because all I do all day long is just look at every pixel and every little blade of grass. Like, oh, there's a thing right there. Change that, or forget about the CG that's on full in the screen. There's a bird in the background. Can you get rid of that bird? It's that kind of stuff. So all I see now in the movie are these choices that we just looked at for a year and change. It was the longest post schedule I've ever had. It was like 66 weeks, which is actually it's actually less time than all the previous movies actually. So it was a mad rush because Disney wanted to move the movie up. I think probably rightly so, to get away from Furiosa, so we don't share that date and cannibalize each other's audience. But yeah, it's been a really fun journey. I've learned a crap ton. It's only my fourth movie. So um, I have a new appreciation for Matt Rupert, who kind of like, and James Cameron, of course, who does this stuff, but like they make it look easy. And it's a really difficult process making these movies, but it's a lot of fun for perfectionists, where you have control over every little aspect of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like I can't imagine working on something like this. I mean, like you said, it's like everything, a lot of stuff's, I know you did a lot of it on location or most of it on location, but like there's so much little tiny details in every single character with the fur and everything. Like I can't imagine what that whole process is even like.
Wild. I'm going to be spoiled when I go back to regular live action because, like there's several times where we invented moments or invented scenes just by using the clean plate that we shot, that I can go back and I can recapture the performance, or use a performance from a different scene and put it into that scene and create a new shot. That looks totally organic and looks totally like we did it, we intended it that way. So it's really kind of fun, the power you have, and honestly, it requires just the trust that Weta can do it all, but they are the best in the world. So it's like you just pitch the idea you want to do, and they'll figure out a way. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And speaking of Weta, something I wanted to talk to you about. So something I know you worked on years ago, it unfortunately didn't get made, is the Mouse Guard movie,
Yeah.
which I was so excited for because that test footage, if you haven't watched it, it's on Wes's YouTube channel. It's amazing. And I hope that movie gets made one day.
Yeah,
Um,
just like Wes Ball mouse guard demo or something, you'll find it. There's
yeah,
people that had to rip the video and then put their own music on it, which
I've
is
seen those. Yeah.
very cool. But go to the OG because that's
Yeah.
the John's some of John's music and it's really cool.
Yeah. And I was curious, like, was that your kind of maybe gateway into doing this? Like, because I assume that was all going to be with performance capture, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
that's
so, yeah, was that like kind of your, I don't know, like training wheels for something like this in a way?
yeah, it was. I mean that's actually where I met Matt. Matt Reeves, director of
Yeah.
Dawn and War, um, and we started talking about this mouse guard thing, and you know, I have to admit, at first I was like, I'm talking mice, with for what talking about? And then I read the comics that are awesome, the graphic novels by David Peterson. He's a fantastic author, and then I started. I remember when Emma watched, she said, I just finished the Maze Runner movie, and I was done with those movies. Doing a trilogy for your first, set of movies, where I'm still learning and and just the nature of those movies, I was like kind of exhausted and kind of ready for something different. I was like, oh, I want to do a little tiny art movie, something really super small. And she's like, no, you're gonna do something big next, something giant. I'm like, oh, okay. And she says, I want you to look at Mouse Guard, and I was like, what are you really? I looked at that before. I don't know. Really? Like, and she's like, what would James Cameron do with it? And I was like, okay, I got it. So, and that's what I really kind of looking at what the material was. And it's really kind of this fantastic, really sophisticated, kind of mature, but also like really just whimsical and just incredibly imaginative and inventive kind of world building stuff. And yeah, I kind of came up with this take and I talked a lot. That's really how I got to know Matt. And I got to know Andy Serkis that way. I cast Andy Serkis in the movie too, and Idris Elba, and my old friend Thomas Bridges Sangster. Sonoya Mizuno was on there too, she's been a great actress. Yeah, we had a lot of great people that were lined up to do this thing. Like 2 weeks before, we got caught up in the Disney Fox merger, and they just kind of shut it down. It never really got a great answer for why. I think it was just because probably Mickey said there can be only one. Yeah, something. I don't know. But who knows? Maybe if this movie does well, I'll be able to bring it back. We'll see. Who knows?
I hope so.
It was honestly one of the most inspiring kind of things I've ever been on before because it reminded me of those kind of Miyazaki movies that I love. Some of my favorite movies are like Princess Mononoke and Castle in the Sky and Spirited Away, and it had that kind of vibe and we did so much design work. I mean, I designed every set, and it was going to be different than Planet of the Apes, for instance, because it's full mo capture. It's closer to Avatar than it is say something like Planet of the Apes because there's no live action photography in it. It's pure motion capture, full CG, everything. It was going to be Weta, of
Yeah.
course. So, and I already done like 2 movies with Weta before. So it was kind of, I already had the relationship already. But yeah, it was a great experience. We built like a whole studio. We kind of invented like new ways of kind of using this thing that's how I really got into Unreal Engine and how we were really leveraging the Unreal Engine to like help us make the thing before it kind of got shipped to Weta to then level up into the full glory of what it ultimately become. But yeah, it was fun, and Matt had lots of great words of wisdom what he learned on the Apes movies and all this stuff, and it was a great experience. And then when it went down, it was we were sad in a weird way. I was probably least sad because I had so many artists and so many the crew members. They were so excited for it. They kept coming up to me because they'd worked on giant Marvel movies and Star Wars movies and all these different things, and they always would come up to me and say, "Thank you for making this." It's like they were so it was such a breath of fresh air for them. It was a different world, but it still scratched all those itches of what those kind of movies are. And yeah, man, it was a shame, and that's when ultimately after that kind of went down, Emma came to me and said, "All right, I know it sucks that happened, blah blah blah, but um, what would you do next Planet of the Apes?" And I was like, "What?" You know. So because it kind of made sense, I guess. I had to learn kind of the Weta mocap side of things, and having known Matt now for a while, and that kind of stuff, it kind of made sense, I suppose. And then we just had to figure out, okay, what was the next story, and then we started that process, that journey of figuring out what would you do with the next Planet of the Apes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I read an interview a while ago that initially you said no, and then you
Yeah,
came back and said yes. And I was
yeah.
curious, like, what was it that made you change your mind? Like, did you just suddenly have this epiphany realization of a story you wanted to tell, or did something else happen?
Yeah, basically that's it. I mean, on first instinct, it's like, make another one. Why? It's like, why would you make another one? The last three was kind of perfect. It was like this nice trilogy. It's one of the best trilogies that's been made, probably other than like Lord of the Rings or something. You know what I mean? Um, so my initial instinct was that it was like, there's no need to do that. Um, but then I started thinking about it, and it's like, the Planet of the Apes franchise is bigger than any director, any actor. It's been around since 1968. You know what I mean? And then there's, of course, the book before that. Um, and so this is a long, long legacy of movies. You know what I mean? Some good, some bad. But all great. All cool stuff. And and so I started kind of opening up my brain to like, okay, what would the next one be? What would you do really? And it's like what I was really most interested in is I was not interested in doing a part four, and I understand the instinct for people who want to see that direct continuation of like, Cornelius, his son, and off he goes and has his grand adventures. And the problem is, the human brain isn't wired for four. You know what I mean? It's like it's beginning, middle, end. Three, it's a perfect little number. And so we really needed to kind of separate ourselves and kind of be our own little kind of distinct chapter. But with that said, I didn't want to lose all this great kind of universe and world building that, Rupert and Matt for the last two had created, that universe of Caesar, all the goodwill that had been built up for that character. And so basically, when I kind of had this kind of epiphany of like, oh, you cut way, way in the future, after. So there's this big giant gap. So the audience gets to catch up now to what the hell has happened since that previous movie, where what's happened to Caesar's legacy. What's he become? What kind of almost spiritual figure has he become? How is myth and legend kind of starting to grow? Apes. I always kind of said that my kind of original pitch was sort of it was apocalypto with apes, and that what I meant was like a very naive, kind of isolated, character who is kind of like, extraordinary circumstances kind of are thrust upon him, and sent him out on this big grand adventure of a kind of awakening of a larger world out there. You know what I mean? So it's not exactly apocalypto now. It's obviously a change since then, but it's not like a revenge movie, for instance. It's not that. But that sense of like a small point of view that gets expanded, and it kind of has his whole mind kind of blown by the world around him that's changing, is very much kind of the story of this movie. And yeah, so once I came up with that idea, I was like, all these ideas started popping in my head of like, oh, I could have this whole kind of eagle culture, and I always kind of pitched it to people of like, we had the previous three movies were apes in their stone age. What about apes entering into the bronze age? You know what I mean? And like, so it's really great because like they can evolve faster than us, from a society kind of civilization standpoint, because they have all these ruins, these kind of lost treasures just waiting to be rediscovered or re-implemented or whatever it is out in the world, left behind them. So they don't have to figure out how to make metal. They have plenty of resources around them. So, and they also have like occasionally, if you can find it, little pockets of knowledge that are kind of just waiting to be rediscovered. And so I love that idea of like kind of essentially like a dark ages that happened after Caesar died, where things were lost. And we've had this in our own human history where like, people have discovered great scientific kind of, things, and then it's lost for 400 years before someone discovers it again. You know what I mean? And so I love that kind of sense of like kind of mirroring sort of our march, as a species, our march through kind of, civilization, through modernity, you know what I mean? And kind of witnessing that through apes. And so, thinking about that, it's like, okay, we've got the previous three kind of movies that were really kind of the beginning in the timeline. And then we got the 68 version all the way 2,000, 3,000 years later after this. We're just kind of on our way towards that other version, just a little baby step. I think there's still so many more movies that they could make, after this and continue it on. But choosing kind of new characters, a new story, a kind of essentially a kind of a new tone, it just helps us be our own thing. You know what I mean? I think it would be death to be constantly just tied to those previous three movies, because you can't be compared to those three. They're great. They're perfect. They're on their own. And so it's best for us to have a little bit of distance, but still kind of be kind of be tied to them, have one foot in that world, I guess, where we get to kind of honor what came before us in a way. And I don't know. I hope it's the right choice for people. I hope they like the choice. And of course, they can always go off and do another Cornelius prequel somewhere. And that was kind of the thinking behind it. And then once we had that kind of burst of inspiration, that's when I told the studio, and I even had the title. You know what I mean? I came in with I had two pieces of artwork that I kind of put together, and I was like, okay, I think I got it. Let me tell you all this, blah blah blah. Here it is. It's either Empire of the Planet of the Apes or Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And I was like, we can't do Empire because obviously, Empire Strikes Back. But it had a great ring to it, because that is kind of what it's about. It's about the first kingdom of the Planet of the Apes forming, this king ape, Proximus Caesar. I didn't have all the information and stuff. I didn't have all these little story things. It wasn't until Rick and Amanda, who were the previous three writers, I kind of brought them into the fold. And, Emma was the first one that said, okay, you got to tell all this stuff to Rick and Amanda and see what they think. And who are great people. And obviously they wrote the Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and were producers and writers on the following movies after that. And so it was great to have kind of that DNA and their kind of wisdom and sort of writing chops and producing chops to help us kind of move forward. And so they're the ones who suggested, well, we just finished Avatar with Josh Friedman, and they suggested getting him to write the first draft. And so that's when the next meeting happened. I remember going to the restaurant, and just kind of, Josh is this great kind of almost curmudgeonly, but in a very nice way, kind of writer, and we kind of laid out the kind of the broad ideas, the broad strokes of it all, and he's like, oh, cool. You want to make a Kurosawa movie? And I'm like, I guess so, sure. And he's like, let's do it. And so he jumped in, and we kind of talked a lot for like several months, just kind of kicking around how all the pieces could fit together, and different inventions and stuff that he had, different ideas he had. And it was Josh really that kind of cracked how to kind of lay it all out in a story form. And then after that, we just kept marching forward and working on the drafts, and until ultimately Disney said, go make it.
Yeah, that's like been one of the things I've been most excited about, is the fact that it's so separate from the last three movies, but it's also in that world. And that's like something I really love about the Planet of the Apes movies. Like, there's no single character or single story it follows. Like, it's like you could go look at the original Cornelius, or you look at Taylor, or you look at Caesar from the last three movies. Like, it's not tied to just one ongoing thing. It's a world that has totally different parts of it throughout.
Yeah, it's not quite like, say, what people have come to expect from, say, Marvel, where everything is very serial, everything's very tightly canon, in a weird way.
Yeah.
Apes movies, because they've been around for what is it, 50 years plus?
Yeah, over 50 years now. Yeah.
So it's like the canon is a little bit more loose. You know what I mean? It's not exactly, oh yeah. So, anyway, so I think there's a freedom to that in a weird way, so that we can kind of do something kind of new and original. Of course, we have a new studio on this too. So before it was always Fox, and now Disney's kind of, it's part of a Disney universe now. So they have certain requirements too. And so hopefully we found the right balance for everybody, and they love the movie. But it was absolutely the right choice in my mind to kind of go in the direction we did.
Speaking of that, the Disney merger, because I know from what I remember, it was announced you were doing it right after the merger kind of was officiated, right? Was like, because I was Mouse Guard was originally on the Fox before the merger, right? Okay. What did you see, like, any sort of shift in how things were approached, or like what maybe was expected of you, or was it kind of smooth sailing the whole process?
No, I mean, honestly, the truth is, they look at it from a business standpoint, and the truth is the box office was going down for the movies.
Gotcha.
And so it requires a certain amount of, like, we have to make this movie more responsibly than others, like financially. We have to figure out that's one of the things. But also, right or wrong, I think there was a concern about the darkness. And that how do we make sure that people have a kind of on this next one, have a good time. So It was all very much a light touch, to be honest, from Disney. They've been very great partners in this. But for the most part, it's been Steve Asbell and Scott Aversano from the studio side who are really kind of shepherding this thing forward through Fox, and they are old Fox guys. So for the most part, Disney was kind of hands off. They just had certain requirements, that before we went forward, that we were happy to kind of to implement. So that's just kind of the reality of things. And that's ultimately, I think, where making movies on the kind of franchise level of things, you have to find a way to balance both the artistic kind of desires and the very practical business, desires, our needs, necessities. So, that's just kind of part of the job. And you kind of wage your way through that whole process. But I think we found a good mix, where we didn't I feel like we have to compromise anything while we still try to give people what they think they need. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. Yeah. Speaking of that practicality, you are very well known from what I've seen for making things look like they cost over 150, $200 million for very, very cheap.
Yeah.
How was that kind of similar on this movie? Like, I don't think this movie was like a $200 million movie or anything like that, was it? Yeah. Like, how do you do, like, what's that like? Like,
Well,
how
I
do you
think
do it?
that's having a strong team that made this movie with a lot of the same people I made all the major movies with. My DP, my production designer, sound designers, my composer, editors, even costumes. The costume designer Maya's was on our Mouse Guard movie, and I brought her over onto this too. All my concept design friends, Aaron Sims and Andre Wallen, and all these really fantastic kind of visualists that we work on really hard up front to prep the movie. And ultimately that's where you save your money, I think, is a clear vision, where you can, so that you're not wasting time. You're not trying to recorrect things, after the fact. And Joe Hartwick, my producing partner, he's worked with me since the very first Maze Runner movie. We kind of we have a company together, and he's very good with money, and he's been around. He's made a lot of movies. He kind of came up. His dad used to run the production at Fox, but Joe has been like an accountant on movies like from Fight Club and all kinds of movies. So he's been around the process of the financial process of making movies for a long time. And so he's now on the creative side with me, but he's got this great wisdom and kind of experience on what it takes to make a movie. How many trucks do you really need? How many crew members do you really? And so he'll make sure that we have what we need and try to make sure the money's on the screen. And that's how our whole thing is. I think movies have got to figure out how to be made for less. Because like the more expensive they are, the more generic they have to become, because they have to appeal to everyone. And so I learned that in the Maze Runner movie, where we made the first one for like $34 million, and we could be a little weird and like experimental in a weird way. And it made a bunch of money,
Yeah.
So we're big on trying to punch above our weight class, and I'm not the only one. There's several other directors out there too who I think kind of pride themselves on that, where we put the money on the screen and try to be efficient. And a lot of that comes down with VFX too, and like making sure that we know what we're doing with the VFX side of things and try to be not waste money. But yeah, this movie is definitely. I'm not sure I'm allowed to say the budget, but it's considerably low. I don't think people will tell. I know on the studio side, people are like, wow, we didn't compromise visually and all that kind of stuff. But
it looks incredible. Like some of the
yeah,
shots in those trailers, like it looks real. It's insane.
yeah, I will say, I always said it before on the VFX side of things. It's like, these VFX movies, I mean, we have more VFX than any of the movies really, because it's very much an ape-centered movie. But there's like 1,500 or maybe almost 1,600 shots in the movie total, and only 30 of them have no VFX in them. So like, every shot is a freaking ape, you know what I mean? And like whether he's just sitting there looking quiet, and all that kind of stuff. So, Weta had their work cut out for him, and it's all new characters. So we had to design new character designs and re-rig them and figure all that kind of stuff. So it was quite a task for Weta to jump on this one. Obviously, they have all the breadth of knowledge from the previous movies they could leverage here, but they are kind of building a new wheel here on this movie. And I will say, every VFX movie has their shots. We're like, I wish this could have been better, or we didn't quite get that one right. It's just the nature of the beast, as we run out of time on these things. But I mean, I'm biased, but I think there's some of the best CG work they've ever done in a movie for sure. It just there's
Can't wait
some
to see it.
you're just like, my God, you know. And the cool thing about it is like it's very, for right or wrong, we'll see what happens with people how they respond to the movie. But we chose a very kind of I don't want to call it boring, but a very straight kind of visual sensibility. There's not a lot of flashy, crazy camera moves, or we tried to be very simple and restrained, I guess, on a kind of cinematic language standpoint, because we wanted it to feel very kind of old school in a weird way. Even we use old anamorphic lenses. I think I've talked about this before, but these movies have never been shot in anamorphic before, and or at least the previous three. I guess maybe the first one was. I can't remember. But it has this kind of old 70s vibe to it that we thought was awesome. These old Panavision C series lenses that we use, and it messes up all the sides of the lenses of the frame, and they're not perfectly sharp, and Weta has to do a lot of work to get those distortions to kind of fit into the plate, even down to the focus pools, because anamorphic acts very strange. It's like that for those of us who grew up on these old movies, when you rack focus, you see this little vertical stretching that happens. You know what I mean? The way the anamorphic thing works. And it's a really cool artifact, but how does Weta put in a new CG character that matches those really strange optics? And so they had to spend a lot of time really mapping the lenses, every lens that we had. I think we had 50 lenses on the movie. And so they spent a lot of time getting all that to work. Even our film LUT is based on an old Agfa film LUT, so it feels a little bit like dirty and old fashioned. And even the shots themselves, while we do have a lot of like handheld spontaneous kind of stuff, which is what I tend to like, there's a lot of just still shots in the movie, which is very much kind of taken from the previous movies, that especially what Matt did, where you can just sit there and hold on some of the best visual effects work you've ever seen. You know what I mean? In a close up. Yeah. I mean, so it was a joy. It was a fun process to work and find the kind of visual language of this thing. But there's definitely some cool kind of shots in the movie that are like, wow, crazy. But the things I'm probably most proud of, I hope, that there's about 30 to maybe 35 minutes of full 100% full CG in the movie. So basically we couldn't build the set, we couldn't do whatever, and it is just 100%. Every blade of grass, every leaf, every little blowing thing in the wind is all Weta. And so it's very much close to the Avatar side of things, which is I've always loved. I've always said I wanted to a mocap movie like that. And the question is like, because we're so out in the real location, in the real world, kind of shooting, real places, can we kind of connect those worlds and make it all feel like it's all one kind of smooth experience? And I think we've done it. I mean, there's some shots in there. I don't think people will be able to tell that that's a 100%, even the bark on that tree is CG in the movie. So, we'll see what happens, but I'm working on something now for the special edition DVD that'll really show off what Weta has done. Because I think it's criminal that they've never won an Oscar for these movies. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. And so, fortunately, we'll be up against Dune, which is also some stellar work. And so, I don't know how, maybe it'll be the same thing on this one, but I'm gonna do my damnedest to help Weta, to show people what Weta does on these movies. I think they do not appreciate the incredible artistry and just pain and just, I mean, sheer creativity and just, I don't know, it's miracles every shot. And I'm doing a little thing for the DVD where you can watch the movie, where the entire movie, with the raw dailies.
I would love that. So that's honestly, that's something I've wanted for the last three movies.
Yeah, I'm working on that, where you'll be able to like watch and just see the final and the raw dailies, sometimes where there's no dailies at all, where you can just watch it and you can see how close they get and what they do and just how they stitch everything together. It's amazing. And you can just sit there and just enjoy it. And I'll do some commentary over it with Eric and stuff, or VFX Soup. And I'm not sure if I'm giving something away for there, but whatever. But I think it's going to be great. I think for geeks like us, it's going to be a first. They've never seen this kind of thing. And you will appreciate sort of like, my God, look what they have to do. It's amazing. All the wind in the fur. And then how do they, some of the hardest stuff in VFX is how do you get the CG kind of characters to interact with others? So we have like, CG, I mean, a human girl, hugging, a CG ape. And like, how do you do that? And it's like, it's wild. And the cameras are all very kind of, dynamic, and it's amazing stuff. And again, because the style is so kind of almost restrained and sort of almost dull in a way, that I think it'll just go right past people. They won't really appreciate, which is the rightly so. They shouldn't be saying, "Oh, look at all that visual effects." Hopefully, they're caught up in the movie and the characters, and they're not paying attention to that stuff. But I'm a frustrated VFX artist from way back when, and I love this stuff. Where it's just like the sheer kind of artistry on display is just, it's stunning sometimes.
Gotcha. Yeah. So getting into some of the actual nitty gritty of the movie and speaking of those characters, Caesar is one of the most iconic and beloved characters of the last like decade plus. I love him so much. And I was curious, like, was it daunting having to follow that up and having to come up with a character that could be as compelling and take us through a new trilogy of movies?
Yeah, yeah, it was. Especially Andy. I mean, poor Owen. It's like, hey, dude, your job is to follow up Andy Serkis's performance for Caesar. It's like, what? Um, but you know what? It's like, it's the best kind of pressure, I suppose, where it's the kind that makes you check yourself and makes you kind of, not take it lightly and take it seriously. But at the same time, at some point, when you start making the movie, you have to throw all that away. Because if you let that kind of like be driving you, kind of constant whispering in your ear, it'll just crush you. It'll just swamp you on set. And so you're just not, when you're trying to make 1,000 decisions a day, you have to kind of go on instinct a bit. So I just kind of have to trust that, like everyone, from writers to Owen at the end there, is, and they did, they're giving it their all. They're putting themselves in this thing, and all their love and their heart and all their kind of devotion towards this great kind of set of movies, this franchise of movies, that it's gonna come through. You know what I mean? So, I don't see it as like we have to top it. I just see it as we have to, you know, stand beside it, stand next to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We'll never replace what those movies did and what Andy did. And now the question is, can we have a new chapter, a new adventure? I think we've done it. It's a new character. I think that was early on. I think it was important for us where, if Rick and Man talked about how they pitched that first movie, it was a story from Pinocchio to Moses. That was his story. You know what I mean? Um, and on this one, we wanted to have a young character this time. We wanted to have a naive, kind of innocent, not a child, but a young adult, essentially. And we're going to witness kind of a very classic kind of hero's journey, Joseph Campbell kind of, coming of age thing of him kind of setting off on this grand adventure and kind of being exposed to a world that he gets to discover the truth about things, and witness kind of his coming of age, essentially. And so this first movie, hopefully it's the start. He's not going to become Caesar by the end, but it's the start of him becoming something that we can kind of explore in future movies. With that said, hopefully the movie stands on its own. It doesn't feel like some kind of cliffhanger or kind of incomplete in some way. So that was a balance we had to find, but yeah, Andy's a great guy though. I mean, he's a fantastic dude. Like I got to know him a little bit on Mouse Guard, but then early on, we were just working on the script. I called him up and said, "Andy, will you read the script for me and tell me what you think?" And I showed him all the concept art that we were kind of, and just walking through the movie, what I was seeing about it. And he was really supportive, and he's like, "This is great stuff." And he gave some great kind of wisdom on and how to kind of like think about the ape thing and just the process all. And it was around that time I was like, "Well, would you be open to like talking to our actors? They're in ape camp now." And so Andy kind of just, he's so gracious and just so generous and kind. He just was kind of our ape godfather that came in just to kind of help everyone, because all the actors basically had never done mocap before. This is new for them. It's a certain kind of actor that wants to do that, to put all that silly suit on with all the dots in their face and the camera in front of them. You know what I mean? And so um, everyone's game for it, but like they don't know what they're expecting. They're gonna expect when they walk on set, and how that all works. And I think Andy kind of just helped them kind of understand, what it's like, and how to kind of center themselves and be confident, that they were gonna be seen by all the cameras. Weta could do their work on top of what they're what they gave us. You know what I mean? So yeah, Andy's, I can't say enough nice things about Andy.
He's one of my favorite actors ever. He's
Yeah.
just incredible. For me, whether it's mocap or just playing Alfred in the Batman, he's
Totally.
amazing.
Yeah, that's what actually Matt told me, and on I was working on Oscar. He's like, dude, he is the best actor he's ever worked with. Forget the mocap side of things. He's just the best actor he's ever worked with. And in Matt's worked with a ton of great actors, you know? So that kind of like really, whoa, yeah, it's amazing. And yeah, you see his work and he's just so good. And he's such a nice guy. That's so rare to be this humble, nice guy, but also so freaking talented, you know? So he's awesome.
Yeah. So switching things over from Noah into the villain side of things, I want to talk about Proximus Caesar for a bit. Um, One of the most exciting things about this movie, from the time we saw the first trailer and we see him saying "What a wonderful day," he looks like such an amazing villain. And I was
Yeah.
curious, was there any movie villains or even real life like historical figures that he was inspired by, or maybe he's similar to?
Yeah, I mean a lot really, but the ones I really thought about talking about that whole Bronze Age thing is like I thought a bit about like Genghis Khan, these kinds of characters in our history that were like you know violent, but also driven by an idea, of unification, of bringing people together, bringing apes together, but he'll do it with an iron fist. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, he's a fantastic character, and Kevin Durant just ate it up, man. He had a good time, and it shows.
I was so excited when he was like, I figured out he's the one who's playing him because he's such an underrated actor. I think he deserves to be in way more stuff and get way more credit. He's so good.
Yeah, yeah, totally. It's fantastic. And again, another super nice dude. It's amazing. Super nice guy. Like total Canadian. But but yeah, he's fantastic. And I love this concept of like the first king ape, the guy who who is a fan of man, you know, and he's probably the most human-like character in the movie, actually. So he speaks in fairly big words. He studies humans, you know what I mean? He learns from them and knows probably the most about them and their history and their past that has been lost over the decades that have passed. And so I love that idea that he's using some of the things that he's learned about human beings and using them for himself to accomplish his goals. You know what I mean? Whether it be, rediscovering electricity and using it as a weapon, or donning a crown and putting on a show for apes to make them loyal followers. All these things. It's just fantastic stuff. Yeah, so he did a great job, and I can't wait for people to see what he did for everybody. It's really cool stuff.
I can't wait to see him. And I was curious, like there's been some really, I think, iconic villains in the series. You look at Dr. Zaius from the original movie, you look at
Yeah,
Koba from the last one.
Nova's one of my favorites of all time.
Yeah, and like what do you think sets him apart from one? Then what do you think people are going to really connect with him?
It's a good question. Remains to be seen, but you know, he's got an ideology. You know what I mean? He's a character that has real ideas, which is cool. And yeah, he's a villain, I suppose, in a way, but he serves as another voice in Noah's trajectory as a character. He's got his father figure in the beginning of the movie. In the middle of the movie, he's got this orangutan named Raka, who's this one voice on his shoulder. And then he's got this new kind of it's several father figures kind of show up in the movie around Noah as he goes on his journey. And then he's got this towards the back half, he's got this Proximus Caesar kind of show up. And they're both giving him different ways to look at the world. And in a weird way, they're both right and they're both wrong. And so it's really cool that by the end of the movie that Noah kind of has to kind of choose his own path forward into the future with both these ideas of who Caesar was, who apes should be, all these things. They're just the starting point for the foundation of this character of Noah as he moves forward into the future, which is, I'm sure, full of conflict and drama. So yeah, he's a neat character. And like I said, just because Kevin just ate it up and just had a great time in a weird way, you couldn't be big enough, because of this character design allows for it, and just this kind of the nature of this character who is like he's like what's his name, Tony Robbins as an ape, who's like, he's like a performer. You know what I mean? It's cool.
Okay, awesome. I'm he seems like a really great character. So he's the most excited thing I think going into this movie for me.
Yeah, people seem to like him who've seen the movie. Yeah, for sure. It's cool.
Awesome. And I want to talk a bit about your, I guess, genre choice, because so far in your career, you've pretty much exclusively done sci-fi and more particularly like dystopian, post-apocalyptic type of
Sure. It's
stuff.
weird.
Um, and I was curious, is that just a coincidence, or is that something that's been like a draw for you? Because I mean, you look at Ruin, which I love, is a great short film, the Maze Runner trilogy, now King
Yeah.
of Planet of the Apes. What is it?
Yeah, it's funny. On Apes is probably closer to Ruin than say the Maze Runner was. Um, Maze Runner was just, it was just the nature of the very first movie, which the very first book that's the one that I liked, was more Lord of the Ring, Lord of the Flies, with this kind of lost thing, like an old overgrown ancient maze kind of thing. So the sci-fi was there, but for the most part, it wasn't really sci-fi. It was more fantasy. And then by the end of the movie, because the books go there, they become very sci-fi, right? And so that was just kind of you have to go do ruins in the desert and scorched world and destroyed world. That's just the nature of the story. I didn't choose that. Planet of the Apes, same thing, right? It's like it's the nature of the beast. It's just it is kind of it needs to be in a world that is the remains of ours, But I have always been drawn to the big reset, this romantic notion of starting over, and the world kind of nature reclaiming the world, and all this great stuff. So yeah, it's a little bit of both, where it's like it's just that the material calls for it, and two, I just seem to like this idea where I was a big Boy Scout when I was a kid. I loved camping. I had these fantasies of like, getting lost in the woods and having to survive for weeks. I loved that stuff. I was a huge nut for that. Still am. I have my bunker over there underneath the stairs. It has all my survival gear just in case. I'm a closeted prepper. But I guess I like being out in the wilderness. I like that sense of uh, you're not reliant on anything but what you have in your head and on your back. I just it makes you feel alive. It kind of reminds you of like what it means to sort of be a human being. We're going to be living in a world with houses and technology and all this kind of stuff, but I love kind of the self-reliance of how to make a fire, how to build shelter, how to feed yourself, all that kind of stuff. I don't know, I love survival stuff. So there's an element of that to these movies, I think, with the Maze Runner, and also with these Apes movies, where they're building a society, and they're not idle. They have to raise eagles and find food, and survive out in the trail and all kind of stuff. I don't know. I guess I'm drawn to that sort of stuff. You know what I mean? That sort of a sense of adventure. You know what I mean? But this movie definitely is a bit more of an adventure on this one. It's a journey movie. So yeah, I guess I don't really self-analyze too much, like why I pick the stuff. I just kind of go where my gut says to go. But yeah, that's true. And I guess Mouse Guard would have been a little different. It was a bit more of a kind of a fantasy thing. But yeah, who knows, man.
Going back to the Maze Runner for a second, you, from what I gathered, you got a really strong bond with that cast that you had for those three movies. I mean, I watched
Yeah.
your live thing that you did over COVID with over
Yeah,
Zoom
right.
called, and
Yeah,
that
it
was
was
really
fun.
fun. And I was curious, was there ever any attempt at bringing any of those cast members, or whether it's like Dylan O'Brien or Will Poulter, into this movie at some point, or was that were you
Yeah.
just trying to get new actors?
Yeah, it crossed my mind actually, to be honest. Um, but when we started the audition process, I came across Owen, his audition tape, and I was just like, that's him, done. It's that's over. That's perfect. Um, And I did a audition, actually, a few of my friends, just to kind of, see how it work. And it's a tricky thing being an ape. It's like, I don't know. It's a casting is a total gut instinct thing for me. Um, Usually I know really quickly, either on the tape or when they walk in the door, like, oh, that's him. Something feels right. I can just, I don't know. It's a thing. And I have great casting directors, that I work with, that don't let me see the actors that you shouldn't even consider anyway. So, you know, so there's a kind of filtering process there. But you're right about the whole Bond thing. Like, I've been very lucky, but especially those Maze Runner movies, and now these most recent ones, where everyone likes each other. and and it's very important to me that they do, because making a movie is ridiculously difficult and stressful and awful in a way. Like, every day is a compromise. You know what I mean? And so if you're not going through that process with people that like each other and are nice to each other and care about each other, it's hell. It's awful. It's not fun. And so we were fortunate in that first movie where we kind of bonded those characters together, and we kind of cast in a way that everyone kind of likes each other for the most part. There's always one or two, that, becomes a thing, which I won't go into, but for the most part, like, everyone loves each other, they're all buddies, and they still talk to this day. And then on this movie, it felt very similar. We cast Owen and Lydia and Travis and Peter and Sarah, who plays his mother Dar, who's a fantastic character in the movie. Hasn't really seen the trailer yet, but she's awesome. Um, and Yeah, and everyone, the whole cast, they're just good people. Nice, humble, not a lot of ego, but are driven to do their best. That's all I can ask for. And so, because we put them through ape school for like about 8 weeks or something, out in Australia, before we started shooting, they spent many, many days together, crawling around like apes, just being kind of, just trying stuff and just being apey, learning how to do that. And so that creates this kind of like bond between them, where they really become a little sense of a family. And I think that kind of stuff shows on camera. I think it shows up whether it's written into the words or not. There's an energy that kind of, finds its way through the lens. And I think you feel it. So yeah, we're super lucky that we've had such good experience with our cast of just really good actors. You know what I mean? Good people too.
Awesome. I love that. Speaking of Owen Teague, who
Mhm.
seems like he's a star who's about to blow up, because he seems
I
like he's
hope
doing
so.
a
He's
great
a
job.
fantastic dude. Yeah.
What was it about him that made him right for Noah?
Yeah, it's pretty wild, man. I mean, I hadn't known him before. I mean, I couldn't say I even saw any of his stuff before. I mean, I had seen it, but I don't remember him in it. I think it was it too, right?
No, he
Um,
was one of the side bullies,
that's
I
what it was.
think.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, right. Um, but it was wild too, because we were talking about before with Andy, how do you follow up Andy Serkis, and I was like, oh crap, okay, let's start this casting process. And I don't know if I think it might have been the first or second tape that came in was Owen Teague. And I saw that tape and I was like, holy crap, this is going to be easy. I can't wait to see the next tapes that come in. You know what I mean? He's great, you know? And then other tapes came in and they're all fine, but no one held a candle to Owen. And I come to find out later that he loves this whole idea. He got into acting because he saw King Kong, and he loves Andy Serkis, and he's like a huge fan of Andy Serkis and what he did. And so, this is like a weird full circle thing, for him, that he arrived at this place where he's playing this ape character. Um, he's also happens to be just a great actor, a really good actor. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's like a miracle, frankly, that this guy fell out of the sky and that just happened to fall into our laps. And I think he'd probably even tell the story that he was thinking about quitting acting, because it's hard to be an actor. It's really, really hard. And this thing is like, Planet of the Apes, I don't know, I'll try it, and he kind of got his girlfriend, I think, to kind of just shoot his audition tape. And it's a cool story that the way he did this one scene that we sent out for people to act, it was a scene that was the opposite to this character Raka, this orangutan. And of course, we were also auditioning characters for Raka. And they both happened to choose this one scene that they could do. And Owen did his version where just by chance he happened to be looking left to right. And then over on when Peter did his audition, he happened to be looking right to left. And so I got to take the two tapes that were done completely separate, unbeknownst to each other, and I got to cut them together as a scene, with the same scene. And it was like you're watching this thing, and it was like I showed it to the studio and the casting. I was like, "Here it is. There's our Rocka and Noah character, guys." You know, it was done. It was perfect. And so yeah, it was just a lot of like just great, like, you know, the movie gods kind of gave us some good some good juju, you know, and gave us some good stuff that we got to choose from here. But yeah, it worked out.
Awesome. Another actor that a lot of people have been talking about, I think, has gotten the fan base the most excited, or maybe not excited, but most curious and speculating, is Freya Allan's character,
Yeah.
who not 100% sure what, I guess the names. I guess it's been revealed now, so I can say it's May. It's in the trailer now. But what is it about? Like, did you expect this reaction when working on the movie, or getting things finished? Like, people are
Yeah.
thinking she's an
Yeah.
astronaut and this and that. So
Yeah, I'm very, very aware of all that. And this is definitely getting into spoiler zone, but also I'll be very careful. Um, I'll say this. If I had my say, there would have been two trailers for this movie and nothing more, and people would have gone in to see the movie for what it was, and retain some discoveries for the movie. With that said, um, these movies are always about humans and apes, right? So the human was always going to be a crucial piece of the puzzle. Um, what we do in the movie really, though, is I think a flop essentially of the previous trilogy, where it really starts a human story that an ape enters into, and then by the end becomes it becomes an ape movie. We're starting with the ape movie, the ape world, the ape story, and a human enters it, and slowly kind of things evolve, and we kind of literally open doors um to possibilities.
okay,
So it was always designed that way to be, it's Noah's story, but it's also May's story by the end of the movie. And that's ultimately where we want to go in the future movies, if we're lucky enough to have them. Because it is about the relationship of apes and humans living together or not. You know what I mean? And the drama that kind of, can we coexist? You know what I mean? And that's what these Planet Apes movies have always been about. Even the very first one, it's like an allegory for racism and our society and those different, the classism all the way through the thing. So um, there's something about the Planet Apes movies that because they're apes, it allows us to hold up a mirror to ourselves in a weird way and remind us what it means to be human. You know what I mean? So, so yeah, I was very aware, and we were all very aware. It was the hardest casting actually. We did the most screen tests for different actors, very, very talented people. But Freya won out because, one, she's kind of an unknown. So you're not looking at someone, I know her, I mean, people know her from The Witcher, but it's a very different type of character. Um, but I think for a vast majority for people, she'll be kind of an introduction to people. She'll be a new actor for people to see. And she's got this look that it feels like it belongs in that 1968 version of Planet of the Apes. You know what I mean? So yeah, it was a fun one to kind of like figure out, and a lot of stress and a lot of careful consideration over. But Freya did a great job, and she had a really tough challenge for her on this one. She's got to thread a needle in terms of how she comes across in a way. And I don't know if I want to give away too much there, but I'll leave
I
it
don't
there.
want you to give away too much either. So yeah. Speaking of, you mentioned this is going to be a trilogy. I'm sure this is
Maybe I don't,
much
I don't
very
want to
much.
presumptuous, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. Well, it's
we definitely
intended
designed
to
this
be
to
the
be,
start.
yeah, we designed this to be its own movie, but we have all these ideas
Yeah,
of where they're going to go. So if
and
we're lucky.
that's what I was curious about. Like, is there anything that you've, maybe not like a full on setup, but like, are there little like things in this movie that you've planted that maybe you plan on,
Yes.
or that are going to play a role in the next movie, that you do like what those are going to be?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's stuff in there. again, it's not like a cliffhanger thing. It's not like a Marvel kind of twist scene or
Yeah.
something. It's not that, but we have ideas of where we want to go, and I cast some people that if we're lucky enough to go forward, that there's this one actor that's in it for 3 shots, and she has no business coming to Australia to do 3 shots. But I love her as an actor, and I think it would be awesome to. I think some people recognize her and be like, "Oh, I know her." It seems like a weird role for like 3 little. But I had these ideas for where that could go. Um, so yeah, we definitely thinking about that stuff. Of course, it's totally open, and we're not tying ourselves down necessarily for what we want, where we want ultimately want to go, but we definitely have ideas. So that's what's good about it. Yeah.
So there's been a lot of legacy sequels and franchise reboots and comebacks in the last 10, 15 years. And I mean, you look at something like Top Gun Maverick, you look at the Star Wars sequels. Something I really love is seeing filmmakers that grew up with or got to be watching this stuff when they were kids now get the chance to put their own spin on things. And
Yeah.
I was
Right.
curious, like, what was that experience like for you? Because I know you liked you were a fan of the original when you were a kid.
Yeah, no, it's wild, man. It's like I was born in 1980, so I have no business watching a movie from 1968. It was strange, but for whatever reason, I watched it all the time, especially when I was in, I don't know, I can't remember my age. It's just always been a part of that, part of my movie diet, So yeah, it's pretty wild, man, that I get to kind of play a role in this crazy long legacy of movies. It's obviously it's very humbling, you know. Uh, it's only my fourth movie, so it was a big, it was a big challenge. It was a lot of like, okay, I felt like I was ready to do it after the Maze Runner kind of experience. I learned a lot from those movies, and I would say it was a good practice, because a lot of those movies were ultimately about execution and how you kind of just put together a scene or how you pull off a thing or whatever it is, right? Um, and so with this movie, and it's like we had a great story, really great characters, and I felt like I was ready on the technical challenge of it all, which is, I mean, there isn't movies like this. There's very few movies that are made like this where the technical kind of requirement is so specific and difficult, and um, I don't think a lot of people could do it, basically. And I feel like I knew enough to wade into those waters, where I wouldn't sink, but I could try to swim, but I also had a ton of help around me. Like I had Weta, of course, I had my producers and writers and the studio itself, that were there to kind of, to help me. But I did feel like I was ready for that challenge, you know what I mean, on a technical level purely. So yeah, man, hope people like the movie. We left it all on the field. We all worked really, really hard on it, and I hope that it's a worthy addition to this long legacy of just, really great, some terrible movies.
Was since you were a fan, like, was there any specific thing or that you wanted to bring to Planet of the Apes that, like, maybe there's something you've always wanted to see that you finally got to put in?
I don't know, actually. I'm not sure. Probably just a sense of the world. One thing that always I thought was a great opportunity was that 68 version where it's like the world is so far removed from, like, there's no ruins left really, right? Or they have to be kind of uncovered in lost caves, or or it's like finding some ancient Mayan ruins underneath the jungles, in South America or something. And so I love that idea of starting to show that progress of our world eroding away. You know what I mean? Where it's like it's not like you talk about kind of dystopian or post-apocalyptic. I usually associate that with, like, fire and twisted metal and just an ugly world. I love the idea of making this a beautiful world. It's that mountain back there is actually a pile of building, rubble of building. You know what I mean? And so it's like to witness kind of our world eroding away and just becoming a part of the landscape. I was really looking forward to that. That's kind of what I always played around with on my Ruin short long ago. And it was fun that we got to play around with that on this thing. I really look forward to doing that. a lot, and it's very difficult to do. I wanted to do more, I couldn't afford to do more. But we had this one giant awesome. I wanted to do like the greatest horse chase, like a car chase on horseback, basically. I wanted to do something kick ass. It was going to take place on the remains of an old LA, like, freeway system. You know what I mean? So all overgrown and crumbling and crazy and stuff. Storyboarded it, pre-visited all. It was awesome. And we just could not afford it. It was just too massive. But I love that idea of the ruins of our world being the playground, for our story to unfold in. And so it's like, well, it's this great story of Noah kind of setting out on this kind of journey of discovery and enlightenment, in the background of these haunting images of our past and what went wrong. You know what I mean? So it's this really cool juxtaposition that kind of, I think, mirrors in a weird way what Owen as a character is going through, or Noah as a character is going through. So yeah, I don't know. Other than that, I love the stuff on the beach from the first movie, 68 version. And day one, the first day of shoot, we went out on the beach and shot the scene of them with these big black horses and the guys trying the things and the guys chained up. And we're like, oh my God, it looks like Planet of the Apes. You know what I mean? So that was like a cool, like, thing on our first day, to shoot that little scene. And then like being like, yeah, we're making a Planet of the Apes movie, baby. Let's go. Um, yeah, that's cool. It's fun.
So I want to get a little more into some of the filmmaking technical kind of sides of things. So you mentioned earlier that you shot with these anamorphic lenses,
Yeah.
and I'm a huge nerd about all that kind of stuff. I like, it has that old 1970s kind of
Mhm.
out of focus on the sides kind of look, and
Yeah.
it's really cool. And was there like is there anything specific you were trying to achieve with that? Just whether it was like an aesthetic thing, a story thing, like anything particular?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's very much kind of an aesthetic thing. It's like, one, we wanted to kind of feel like we're somewhere in between the previous three movies and that old 68 version, right? Where we belong somewhere in there, right? And the sense of the story, so much of it is about, yes, we're way in the future and things have been lost. Time has sanded things down or eroded kind of the truth and even literally the landscape around us. So I like the idea that the camera, the look of the movie itself felt kind of dirty and kind of almost rediscovered. You know what I mean? So that was really fun. And then it was something that Julian, my DP, and I kind of discovered along the way a little bit, where it's like the magic trick of these movies is like the work that Weta does, and what the actors are bringing to it. It's like, it's kind of like mesmerizing. You're just like, that ape looks real. you know Bleep that out, sorry. That ape looks real. um uh and so in a weird way, you wanted the camera work to be very simple and restrained and not be fancy. Let all the real fanciness be what and team is doing. You know what I mean? And so that was kind of like a thing that we took an approach to, which basically means shooting it like the old 68 version. It's a lot of simple moves and that kind of stuff. There's a couple scenes where I go crazy with the camera, but it's fun. This is very, very grounded and, handheld, running through an attack for like a minute or something. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's kind of the choice there was simply that, just to one feel like a different movie from the previous three, which were shot in Vancouver, which were shot in spherical lenses. You know what I mean? And with a very kind of crisp LUT, and this movie we wanted to feel different. We're in sunshine. It's a dirty kind of, movie that's been kind of like cleaned up, and there's even like film grain and that kind of stuff. So yeah, and that was kind of the choice. Hopefully people, run with it.
So far it looks really, really great. Another on the audio side of things, the music side of things, John Paisano, your composer, who you've worked with on all the Maze Runner movies.
Yeah.
What were like, I know you said, I think there was a quote where you said one part Giacchino, one part
Well,
yeah, I'm blanking on the original composer's name.
Goldsmith.
Goldsmith, that's right. Yeah. And then kind of going your own thing. Like, is there any themes we could expect to hear that might be pulled out of either the original movie or either of the Caesar movies?
Yeah, definitely. You'll hear some echoes of those things. We have plenty of our own too, but you'll hear the DNA of the previous movies. because Caesar is like he is a part of this movie. He is mentioned and talked about and pondered over. He's like a spiritual presence in this movie as his character. And so elements of his themes are scattered throughout, you know what I mean? So yeah, but there's also some straight up, like straightforward Planet of the Apes 68, human hunt type, Goldsmith. What?
Okay.
It's very cool stuff. So it's like very throwback. I think some people appreciate it. Some people are like, what is this music? But we had a lot of fun. I think John had a lot of fun. He did a great job, and yeah, I can't wait for people to hear what he did with it all, because it was a tough challenge for him,
Yeah,
to kind of follow up the previous movies, but also do kind of this Goldsmith thing.
Yeah, I'm a huge musical score junkie, and like those what Giacchino did with those movies, and even Patrick Doyle on the first Rise, and of course Jerry Goldsmith's iconic music. Like it's some of my favorite movie music ever. It's all just incredible stuff.
I even love some of Danny Elfman's stuff from that. That's often a criticized movie, but there's great stuff in there.
So, like I mentioned earlier, talking about it and potentially becoming a trilogy. I know you have Legend of Zelda coming up after this.
Is that true?
Do you possibly have Legend of Zelda coming up after this? Do you plan on sticking around to direct a follow-up if it were to happen, or do you think maybe you'll step back and have someone else take over and you produce, kind of similar to what happened with Rupert Wyatt going on to Matt Reeves? Do you not really know? It's kind of up in the air for now.
Yeah, honestly, these kind of things are always up in the air. Almost what I've learned in this business is that it never goes according to plan. So the truth is, I think we had a great time making this movie. I think the studio is very happy. We're starting to kind of kick the tires on what the movie could become. But like I said, this movie alone took 5 years to make. So we've got to basically start the process. We're not going to be shooting tomorrow or anything. So, we'll start marching forward and seeing what happens. You know what I mean? I would definitely do another one if the script was perfect. You know what I mean? But these movies are really difficult to do. And I got to say that there's an element of my first 3 movies were a trilogy. So I know what that means to kind of like to be, I don't want to say stuck. That sounds like a bad word in a way, but like, locked in with one particular story for almost 10 years of my life. So I know what that means. And I'm not sure I'm really anxious to like, just to stay with a single story for so much of my life here. You know what I mean? Like I'm in my 40s now. So, my 40s and 50s are going to be, like, just usually a director's best years of movies. Like they use their 30s to kind of learn how to do what they're doing. And then in the 40s, they kind of like get to kind of show off and do some stuff, So, I'm really looking forward to other things, of course, but I do love these characters. I love the actors and I love the people involved with these movies. So, I'd love to be involved with it. What that means, I don't know. We'll have to see how it all shakes out, but, fingers crossed.
Okay, awesome. I assuming I think the movie's gonna be great, and if it is, then I want you to do all 3 of them if you want to. So I'm very looking forward to seeing how that all progresses. I've got a couple more questions for you, some smaller things, but I was curious, do you have a favorite character in this movie?
It's like asking you what your favorite child is, Let me think about it for a second there. There's just some great characters. I mean, like, Proximus is so fun. Noah is so great. Owen did such a good job with him. Raka, people are gonna love Raka. I'm sure of it. He's kind of almost not quite the comedy aspect, but he's a very light presence, a sense of joy in the movie. Suna and Anaya, people love Anaya. Some people love Anaya. He's got a great design. Suna is like, we worked really hard on. There's never been a female ape, really. I mean, there's always been this little kind of couple shots of female apes, but we needed a female ape in this movie. And how do you make a pretty ape? It's not easy. It was the hardest design that we got in this movie, to make something that feels appealing as a female. Because for the most part, if you look at female apes, they don't look very good. They just look like male apes. You know what I mean? So like, and the reality of these things is you can't put lipstick and like eyelashes on them. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
so to come up with a kind of a feminine looking ape, which we worked really hard in her profile. Just she's a very kind of appealing to me shape of a character. When there's a couple shots where you see her kind of in profile, and it's like, oh, she looks so nice. I like her face. You know what I mean? So that took a long time to get that to work. So I like that part of it. Dar is Noah's mother. That I think that was she was a kind of surprise for all of us in a way. She's only in the movie for a few scenes, very important scenes, but almost even in the very first viewing of the movie, people are like, I love Dar. She's amazing. So Sarah did this great job, and just elevated the role beyond what was even on the page, I think. Koro is Noah's father. His design, I think, is freaking awesome. He looks really cool. He's this master bird.
Yeah.
It's this very kind of like an elder statesman kind of figure type thing, and he looks really cool. Silva and Lightning. Silva is the gorilla, this big baddie, and I mean he's kind of, I gotta say, he's the straightforward bad guy, the guy you love to hate. You want to see him get his comeuppance kind of thing. But Ika did such a good job playing him. He's got such attitude. He's so badass. He was really fun to do, and he's got good. There's just one shot we just found like right at the last minute, basically, and of him with his helmet on, and he looks so cool. It's like he's just a cool looking character. And I had this whole ideas for what to do with gorillas in the next movie. I want to do a really nice good guy gorilla in the next one, but he's a great bad guy. And then there's this Lightning character who like my DP loves Lightning. Lightning is this little second hand villain that follows Silva around, and he's bald. He's like, he doesn't have any fur on him, essentially, and he's got this scar on the side of his face, it's one of those lightning scars, and it's because he was playing around, because when the apes were trying to figure out how to use electricity, he was playing, his backstory of course, but he was playing with electricity and he electrocuted himself, and that's probably why he lost all his fur. And so he goes around scratching himself. That's why he wears this fur, because he still wants to feel like an ape with fur. And so he's he's got a great design, and Ross Samuel, who plays him, just ate it up and just had a great time playing him. And so, yeah, I'm sure I'm leaving people out, but like, man, like they're all really great characters. I think we did a good job of just creating a really distinct set of people that hopefully you want to follow into future movies. You know what I mean? Fingers crossed.
Everyone so far, I'm already 100% invested in Noah. I think his friends look great. I think Rocco looks like I'm going to love him. Like,
And what's interesting about the Noah character, the character of Noah, I kind of mentioned this to Owen, is that, it's really hard playing the straight guy in a movie. I mean that in terms of like you've always got these really colorful characters around you. They're going to talk about Proximus. They're going to talk about Rocca. They're going to talk about, whatever, all these different like characters. But like Luke Skywalker in a weird way, you love Han Solo, or Darth Vader or whatever it is. But like, it's often overlooked, the main character that is the straight character that is really the glue that holds all those things together. And so I hope people will appreciate the subtlety and nuance that Owen gave his role, his character, because he really holds the whole thing together in a way. But I think he did a fantastic job. And so I hope people really fall in love with him the way we all did on set.
I can't wait to meet him. Another favorite question. I was curious. And if you don't have one, it's fine, but do you have a personal favorite of the last three movies, Rise, Dawn, and War?
Yeah, Dawn.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. For me, it's the best one, I think. And knowing now what he went through to make it, I have even more respect for it. Because they had a really rough schedule, and it was his first one, and all this crazy stuff. But there's something about that story, in a weird way, similar to us. There's a time jump. You find how they've evolved a bit. It starts as an ape movie that humans come into. It's about kind of sort of uncovering sort of something that was lost long ago. So, it also looks fantastic, because I mean, that Vancouver look was awesome. It's dark, and like, that was a perfect kind of way to get back into the Apes movie with that dark kind of tone. That's why we couldn't do that. it's like, it just, we do not want to just be like, oh, we're doing Dawn again. You know, it's just, we had to change it up. So we're not compared to it in a weird way, but I love Dawn. I think it was a fantastic one. And they're all great. I mean, they're all fantastic, but Dawn to me has a special place of just being kind of the best of that group. At least personally, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I just rewatched the whole trilogy, and that it's an incredible movie. It just pretty much every way. It's just the Koba, the Caesar's journey.
Yeah, it's
it's
very
so incredible.
Shakespearean and
Yes, yes,
it's good stuff.
yeah. When it comes to this movie, did you have a specific day on set or moment that was just like a really standout highlight for you that you're gonna kind of take away from this whole experience?
I don't know, man. The truth is, for me, I don't enjoy set production very much. Um, it's all compromise. It's always what you can't get, or the shot you couldn't get, or the cloud and, and the light's not right, or whatever the hell it is. You know what I mean? So I always feel like I'm losing when I'm on set. You know what I mean? It's really in post where I really feel like, oh, okay, let's get to work. You know. With that said, it's always fun being around the actors, you know, and just in doing this crazy stuff. I'm very thankful to have the opportunity to be able to do this for a living. You know, I'll do it as long as I'm allowed to, you know. So I don't want to sound like, you know, ungrateful for the opportunity here. Um, but I can't think of like anything. Oh, I love that. I mean, you always have your little things. That was great. That was cool. Whatever it is. But you know, usually I'm just such a glass half empty kind of guy when it comes to set, you know, and I can't think of any right now. I'm sure there were though. I'm sure other people will have great things to say about this day or that day or something. But for me, it's always just a matter of like just trying to survive, you know, what we need to get.
All right. Well, I got one more question, then I'll let you go. But what do you think it is about Planet of the Apes, just as a franchise, that connects with the fans and has grown this really awesome fan base and that has kept people coming back again and again for 50 years, whether it's, you know, the maybe the lower times at the Tim Burton movie or, you know, now we have the great movies. But what do you think it is about this franchise that people really just love so much?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. And we ask ourselves that same question. We have whole research teams that go and ask that same question. Um, you know, I think there's an element of the sci-fi concept itself is on its face kind of interesting. You know, characters that are thrown into a world that's totally upside down. You know, that's just, you know, that first Planet of the Apes movie was like, what? Apes acting like humans? But again, like we talked about before, this any good sci-fi always has at its heart ideas behind it, or it's asking questions, or it's looking at kind of issues in the society around it, right? And so, you know, that first movie in particular, you know, it's like it was having a conversation with people about today in this fantasy world. And so by doing this kind of weird upside down thing, you're almost able to kind of directly address whatever the topic is without without a lot of you know, distraction where it's like there's something about it that allows you to kind of like, you know, judge yourself in a weird way, you know, because they're apes and not humans. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I feel like the concept itself is always just kind of lend itself well to just, you know, it's just an enticing idea, you know, an enticing setup. But the movies that always work are the ones where there's real emotion and real story and character kind of at its heart and root. You know, that's talking about ideas here. But and hopefully we've also, you know, uh, stuck that landing too in our movie. But I guess I don't know, I'd ask you the same thing. You're a big, you know, fan and studier of these movies. What do you think?
I mean, I think it's a part of what you said that the social commentary aspect. I mean, it's a reflection of our own society, but it does it in such a unique, unexpected way, and it has great characters that keep you coming back. You know, look at Cornelius and Zira, you look at Taylor from the original movie, or now you have Caesar and Rocket and Maurice, and now potentially Noah. Like it's filled with so many people that you just care about, and it's also, I think it's unlike any other franchise. There really just isn't another whatever genre. There's nothing else quite like it, and I think that is really special.
Yeah, you know, there's like I think it's Truffaut that said, you know, the great movies are ones that blend perfectly spectacle and truth. You know what I mean? And these movies do that. You know, especially the previous three, right? That we were just talking about, like so Dawn in particular. You know, where they feel like honestly, genuinely, authentically good stories and good characters and good movies, good films. But there's also, and the same thing, this works the same way for the 68 version, the spectacle of the top tier, cutting edge, technical aspects of it all is also an element of this stuff, right? So in the 68 version, it's like, wow, look at the makeup. That's the best makeup I've ever seen. And then of course, even in Tim Burton's movie, I think some of that stuff with Tim Roth, some of the best makeup you've ever seen. It was fantastic. I enjoyed it for that alone. And then of course now with the latest reboot, it's like you're looking at some CG that's just like mind blowing. You know what I mean? And so it's it's like, I always say that these Planet of the Apes movies they're kind of one of the last kind of thinking person's blockbuster. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think there's an element of that to these movies that hopefully we follow on in the great tradition. So fingers crossed.
I am so excited to see what you've done with it. It looks like an amazing movie. Counting down the days, there's less than 3 weeks to go now. Uh, so excited to see this movie. I think it looks like you've done a great job. So, Wes, thank you so much again for taking time out of your schedule to do this. I wish you all the luck in the world. Can't wait to see the movie. Um, just I think you're doing a really great job so far.
I won't take all the credit because I had a fantastic crew of people around me too. They deserve all the credit too. But thank you very much, Josh, and I appreciate all your kind of thoughtful kind of analysis of all these movies. Pleasure chatting with you, and hope you like the movie.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.